What unfolds when a police officer with a control issue encounters a woman who outranks him in every significant way? It began late on a Wednesday night, just after 11 p.m., the kind of hour when most of Toledo, Ohio is quiet, except for the rare night shift worker heading home, or, in this case, Lieutenant Colonel Adrienne Wallace, driving back through town after finishing a base meeting 2 hours south. She was behind the wheel of a government-issued black SUV, mildly tinted windows. Nothing flashy, clean, simple, quiet, just like her. Adrienne had been driving for a while, humming softly to the rhythm of the road, her thoughts already turning toward home. She was not speeding, not swerving, and nothing about her driving drew attention. But to Sergeant Daniel Mercer, it looked different. He was parked near Reynolds Road, his usual hideout, sipping lukewarm coffee while scrolling through his phone. It had been a dull shift. No calls, no movement. Then an unfamiliar vehicle appeared. He tossed the coffee cup aside and pulled out. The cruiser's lights flashed before Adrienne even realized he was behind her. She slowed, blinked once, and calmly pulled over. Composed and professional, just like she had been trained. The patrol car door slammed hard. She glanced in her side mirror, watching a tall man approach, hand on his holster, flashlight in the other. He did not stop at the passenger side. He came straight to her window. "License and registration," he said. No greeting, no explanation. Adrienne kept her hands in view and rolled her window halfway down. "Officer, may I ask why I am being stopped?" Mercer narrowed his eyes, shining the beam directly in her face. "You were drifting between lanes. No signal. Looked like you might be impaired." She lifted an eyebrow. "I was not. License." "And registration," he repeated, this time with more force. Adrienne did not push back. She moved slowly and carefully, reaching into the glove compartment for her documents. As she handed them over, she stated, "This is a government vehicle. I am a federal employee." Mercer glanced at her ID and paused. "You military?" "Yes." He gave a slight smirk. "That does not put you above the law. I never claimed it did." His tone grew sharper. "Step out of the vehicle." Adrienne blinked. "Excuse me?" I said, "Step out of the car." "I am conducting a sobriety test." Her jaw tightened, but her tone stayed calm. "On what basis?" "I have complied. I have not been drinking." "I would like to know the reason." Mercer stepped closer. "So now you are refusing a lawful order?" Adrienne stayed put. "No, I am asking for clarification." He did not like that. Without another word, he opened her door himself. "I need you to step out of the vehicle. Now." That was the moment Adrienne quietly turned on her phone camera and pressed record. "Just to be clear," she said, "this interaction is being documented." Mercer glanced at the phone. A flicker of hesitation showed in his eyes. But he did not stop. Out of the car, Adrienne stepped out, standing tall, not aggressive, just composed. She did not raise her voice or resist, but even in civilian clothes, her presence spoke volumes. For the first time, Mercer really looked at her, and a small voice inside him asked, "Who am I dealing with here?" But his pride spoke louder. He went on with the field test, making her walk a straight line under the streetlights. Treating her like some careless weekend driver, she passed without issue. No slurred words, no missteps, no delay. Still, he wrote her a citation for failure to maintain lane. Adrienne accepted the citation without a word, just a glance. She returned to her car and disappeared into the night. What Mercer did not realize was that the ticket would reappear in a courtroom and shift everything. Sergeant Daniel Mercer was no rookie. 15 years on the job had carved lines into his face and hardened his sense of self. He had seen it all, from neighborhood disputes to chaotic car crashes, and built a reputation. The kind that made younger officers sit straighter when he walked in. And that suited Mercer. He was not one for discussion. He gave instructions. In his mind, the badge gave him control, authority, the final word. Whether it was a teenager with an attitude or a motorist with too many questions, Mercer never gave ground. He never said sorry. At his West Toledo precinct, they all knew who he was. A cop who completed reports, showed up on time, and never hesitated. That also meant they knew he could be harsh, direct, quick to escalate. But no one really pushed back until that night. After the stop, Mercer returned to the station and barely mentioned it. He filed the citation into the system, added a brief note, failure to maintain lane, possible impairment, no arrest, and docked his body cam as usual. The footage sat untouched for 2 days before anyone viewed it. In the meantime, Mercer laughed about it in the break room. She tried to pull rank, he told Officer Diaz. Flashed a government ID like it was supposed to impress me. Diaz raised an eyebrow. She was military, Mercer shrugged. That's what she claimed. Some federal type with an attitude. What was her name? Leaning back in his chair and opening a bag of chips, Mercer said, Wallace. Adrian Wallace. Diaz's expression changed. You mean Lieutenant Colonel Wallace? Mercer paused. How do you know that? She gave a talk at the academy. Last year, Diaz replied slowly. She's not just military, she's high-ranking. Runs logistics out of Fort Wayne. Bronze Star. 2 deployments. She's the real deal. Mercer scoffed and waved it off. I do not care who she is. On the road, I am the authority. Still, there was something in Diaz's tone, respect, maybe even a warning, that stayed with him. It was a small dent in Mercer's usual certainty, yet he still did not re-watch the video. He did not give the ticket another thought. In his mind, it was already handled, but it was not. Adrian had filed a formal complaint the next morning, not only with internal affairs but also with the Inspector General's office, and she was not alone. The video she recorded was already in the hands of her legal team. Copies were quietly moving through the military chain of command. Mercer had no idea. He was back to his routine, answering minor calls, snapping at people, during stops, carrying himself like someone untouchable. And for years he had been. The system had backed him. Supervisors turned away. Union reps shut down complaints. Mercer had grown to believe that the rules did not apply to him the way they did to others. But now, he was up against someone different. Someone who did not yell or fight or break down. She followed the process. She recorded everything. She made one phone call, at the right time, to the right place. And she had the proof. But Mercer still did not see it. He did not see it coming, until the envelope landed on his desk, labeled as a formal inquiry. Adrian Wallace was not someone who made noise without reason. She was not dramatic, not confrontational, and definitely did not have time to chase down every small injustice that came her way. Not after 22 years in uniform, 2 deployments overseas, and enough close calls to shake most people. But this situation felt different, because this time it was not just about her. It was about every young soldier she had mentored, every civilian she had seen mistreated without anyone to speak for them, every woman, especially every black woman who had been forced to stay quiet just to avoid trouble. And she was not going to do that anymore. Back at Fort Wayne, Indiana, Adrian sat at her desk the morning after the stop, staring at her computer screen. She had barely slept. Not only because she was upset, though she was, but because she kept replaying the entire encounter in her mind. The way he spoke to her like she did not matter. The way his hand hovered near his weapon. The way he tried to provoke her into reacting. She recognized the pattern. She knew exactly what could have happened if she had not kept her voice calm. She knew how quickly things could spiral, even with a camera recording. Her aide, Sergeant Daniels, stuck his head through the door. "You all right, ma'am?" Adrian looked up, face composed but focused. "No, but I'm handling it." He stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind him. "I watched the footage," he said. "You want me to contact the base?" "Attorney? Already did," she replied. Daniels paused. "You sure you want to take it public?" Adrian leaned back slightly. "I'm not after attention. I want accountability." And she meant every word. Her entire career had been built on discipline and integrity. Her rank was not just a symbol, it was earned through years of work and choices that impacted real lives. She had led convoys through risky areas, managed relief missions after natural disasters, and taken charge of troops, supplies, and safety on 4 continents. But none of that mattered the moment she was pulled over on that empty Ohio road. To Mercer, she was just another driver acting suspicious, one who did not respond quickly enough. And what bothered her the most was not just how he acted, but how at ease he seemed doing it. That was the deeper issue. So Adrian made a few calls. First to JAG, then to the Inspector General's office. She sent over the video and filed her complaint. She did not exaggerate. She did not add drama. She simply stated the facts, backed by clear footage, and let the truth speak for itself. By the end of the week, the story was already making rounds in legal circles within the military. It had not reached the public yet, but Mercer's name was now linked to an internal inquiry. The department's legal counsel had been notified. As for Adrienne, she continued her work. She showed up each day, said nothing unless someone brought it up. But in the background, she was preparing for what might come next. Her attorney had pointed out that the traffic stop may not have just been improper. It could have broken federal rules, especially considering her role and the lack of clear cause. And if it came to court, they were ready. Adrienne did not hesitate. She was prepared for that. Not until he was told to appear in front of a judge. The envelope was plain, just a basic manila folder with his name typed on it, and a return address from the Lucas County Civil Court. Mercer opened it in the parking lot, only half paying attention. He figured it was just another traffic notice or a routine memo. But it was not. It was a court summons. A formal civil rights complaint had been filed. The plaintiff, Lieutenant Colonel Adrienne Wallace. The charges: violation of constitutional law, rights during a traffic stop, including wrongful detainment, intimidation, and misuse of authority. Mercer stood still, staring at the document. Then he laughed out loud. "No way," he said under his breath. "No way this goes anywhere." But the moment he stepped back into the station, he felt the tension. His captain, Officer Reading, called him into the office. The door shut, blinds closed. "Dan," Reading began, "we need to talk." Mercer sat down, arms folded. "About what? The woman from the other night? She's trying to act like a victim now?" Reading did not smile. "She is not acting. Do you even realize who she is? I don't care who she is. She got pulled over, acted entitled, and now she's upset I didn't treat her special." Reading leaned forward. "She's not just anyone. She's a lieutenant colonel, a war veteran. Her record is clean, and she has serious connections. Plus, it's all on video, both from your camera and hers." Mercer rolled his eyes. "So we just give in because she wears a uniform?" "No. But we also do not act like this is nothing. You are going to court. And if this becomes public, and it will, it's going to be a mess." Still, Mercer could not shake his pride. "She wasn't even arrested. I didn't lay a hand on her. I followed protocol. You were tense, Dan. You pushed the situation. You treated her like a criminal before you even asked who she was." Mercer pressed his lips together. For once, he had no clever reply. The notice listed the court date, 3 weeks away. In the meantime, talk spread through the department. Quiet conversations in the locker room, glances in the hallways. No one said anything directly, but Mercer felt it. He was no longer untouchable. The image had cracked, and people noticed. At her base, Adrienne prepared too, but in a different way. She did not hold press briefings or seek headlines. She met privately with her legal team, reviewed every second of the footage, and detailed everything clearly. She stayed steady, focused but determined. Her lawyer, Delaney Price, sat across from her. "Are you sure you want this in court? It will be public. It might follow you." Adrienne nodded. "Good. Let it." Price paused. "Most would have walked away." "I've walked away from too much already," Adrienne said. "This is not just about me." She was not chasing money. She wanted it on record, a case that could be cited. A moment that showed power does not excuse behavior, and silence is not the only option. She was not just standing up for herself. She stood for everyone who had been ignored, talked over, or pushed aside behind a badge and flashing lights. And when the court date arrived, she did not enter quietly. She walked in wearing her full service uniform, medals, badges, rank displayed clearly on her chest. She wanted the jury to see her for exactly who she was, not just as a woman in a car that night, but as someone who had served her country, respected the law, and expected the same respect in return. Mercer was already seated when she entered. He turned, saw the uniform, and for the first time, his smirk faded. But the real moment had not arrived yet. When Wallace took the stand, the room leaned in. The courtroom was full, not with reporters, at least not yet, but with officers from both the local department and Fort Wayne military base. Adrienne's peers sat quietly, dressed in uniform or formal clothes, beside civilians who were unaware of the deeper meaning behind the case. To some, it seemed like a traffic stop gone wrong. But to Adrian, it was a turning point, something that had been building for a long time. Mercer sat at the defense table, stiff in his suit, face expressionless, but clearly tense. His lawyer, Charles Brenner, leaned in and whispered something to him. Mercer did not react. He just kept looking at the judge. Then Adrian was called. She stood up, adjusted her collar, and walked to the stand with the same calm focus she had carried through missions in dangerous zones. She did not rush. She did not stumble. Everyone was watching her. Her medals reflected the light, and her presence commanded attention, not because of appearance, but because of who she was. The judge cleared his throat. "Colonel Wallace, thank you for your service. You may proceed." Delaney Price stepped forward, ready. "Lieutenant Colonel, could you walk us through the events of January 17th? Adrian answered in a calm, clear voice. "I was driving back from a meeting with the Indiana Guard Reserve around 11:15. Officer Mercer pulled me over. There was no reckless driving, no sign of impairment. I cooperated and asked reasonable questions." He replied aggressively. Her tone stayed even. No anger, just facts. He ordered me out of the vehicle without saying why. When I asked again, he repeated it louder. That is when I turned on my phone to record the rest. Delaney nodded. "Did you ignore any lawful orders?" "No." "Did you resist at any point?" "No." "Did you make your identity clear?" "Yes." "I told him I was a federal employee and driving a government car." The room stayed still. No noise, just her words and the sound of pens taking notes. Then the videos played. First came the footage from Adrian's phone, steady, sharp, and difficult to ignore. Then the body cam, showing it all. Mercer's voice, his stance, his hand, resting near his holster even when she followed directions, the unneeded field test. The dismissive reaction when she passed it. The jury did not say a word. They did not need to. You could feel the change in the atmosphere. Next came cross-examination. Brenner approached the stand, using that cautious tone lawyers often adopt when trying to stay respectful while pushing hard. Lieutenant Colonel Wallace, with full respect, could it be that Officer Mercer was simply doing his job? Adrian answered without hesitation. No. Could it be that he was acting out of concern for your safety or for others? I was driving straight. I was sober. I did not act out. There was no risk. And yet you recorded the stop. Why? Because I have lived long enough to know silence does not keep you safe. I wanted a clear record of what really happened. Brenner gave a small nod. So, you do not think officers should have flexibility during stops? Adrian looked directly at him and replied, calm and clear. I believe discretion must be used. With discipline. A badge is not a free pass. It is a duty. That statement landed hard, even the judge took a moment before moving on to the next question. Then it was Mercer's turn. He did not take the stand to speak, just stood by as the footage was played again. This time, frame by frame. Every pause, every short answer, every look he gave her like she did not matter. The prosecutor leaned in. Sergeant Mercer, why did you ask her to step out of the car? Mercer tensed up. She seemed evasive. Did she disobey any of your instructions? She questioned me. Is questioning an officer against the law? Mercer paused. No. Did she raise her voice or make any threats? No. So what led you to escalate the situation? No. Reply. Sergeant Mercer, were you aware that she was a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army? Not at the time. And if you had known? Mercer's tone lowered. I probably would have acted differently. The room went still again. There it was. The truth, or at least a part of it. Not an apology, just a moment of honesty. That night, Mercer had not seen a person. He had seen someone who did not respond quickly enough, who did not speak the way he preferred, who did not submit. And now, with her rank visible and her presence undeniable, everyone else could see it too, but the trial was not over yet. The jury still had to decide what real accountability looked like. 3 days passed before the verdict was delivered. This time, the courthouse was quieter. No military uniforms, no off-duty officers. Just Adrian, her lawyer, and a few local citizens who had followed the case out of interest. Mercer sat beside his attorney, hands clasped, trying to hold on to the same blank look he had shown throughout the trial. But now his jaw moved slightly, grinding his teeth without realizing. Judge Cynthia Morales shuffled the papers in front of her, then looked across the courtroom. "In the matter of Wallace versus Mercer," she said, "the jury has ruled in favor of the plaintiff." Mercer shifted. Adrian remained still. "The court finds a violation of constitutional rights during an unlawful stop and detainment. In addition, the court concludes that Sergeant Mercer's conduct did not align with department guidelines or basic professional standards." No cheers, no reactions, just the clear weight of the ruling. Mercer's lawyer leaned in and said quietly, "We will appeal." But even he sounded unsure. The judge continued, "While no criminal charges will be brought at this time, the plaintiff is awarded $35,000 in damages. This judgment will stay on permanent public record. It will also be forwarded to the Department of Justice and the Toledo Police Department for internal review and possible policy updates." Adrian did not smile. She did not raise a fist or celebrate. She simply nodded once, not toward the judge or the jury, but to herself. She had done what she came to do. After the hearing, Mercer stood outside the building, walking near the steps. Few local reporters had started to gather. Not a crowd, but enough that he lowered his head and held a folder over his face as cameras clicked. He did not speak. He did not give a statement. He got into his car and drove away. Inside, Adrian stopped in the hallway, pulled out her phone, and saw the message. "Verdict in your favor. Case closed." Her attorney caught up. "You could have asked for more." Adrian shook her head. It was never about the money. Delaney watched her for a moment. "Do you think it will make a difference?" Adrian turned to the glass doors. "I don't know, but maybe. Next time he pulls someone over, he might pause." A week later, Mercer was placed on administrative leave as an internal investigation began. There were talks that he could be transferred. Others believed it marked the start of the end for his job. Either way, the shield that once gave him cover now had a visible crack, and people noticed. Back at Fort Wayne, Adrian resumed her duties like nothing had changed. She had no interest in becoming a symbol. She declined interviews. She had tasks to complete, people to mentor, missions to oversee, and standards to maintain. But across her unit, the message came through clearly. You do not need to raise your voice to be respected. You do not have to break to show that harm was done. And often, the quietest response is the one that speaks the most. Still, even with the verdict behind her, Adrian understood that the work was not done. Because accountability is not just about consequences, it is about what follows. 2 months later, Adrian stood before a group of new recruits at Fort Wayne. Most of them had worn the uniform for only a short time. New faces, open minds, eager to serve. This time, she was not there to discuss tactics or planning. She came to speak about leadership and who you are when no one is around. She looked across the room and asked one question. How many of you believe wearing a uniform automatically earns you respect? Several hands went up, some unsure, some steady. She nodded. I see why you think that, but here's the truth. Respect is not given. It is earned. Every day, every decision. She let that sit for a moment. It is the same with power, she said. The badge, the rank, the authority, they are not shields. They are responsibilities. And if you cannot carry that responsibility with control, then you should not carry it at all. In the back, a new soldier leaned forward, listening. Closely, Adrian waited, then continued. When I was stopped by an officer who forgot that, I had options. I could have shouted. I could have reacted. I could have ignored it. She looked around. I did not do any of that. I recorded it. I reported it. I appeared in court. And I told the truth. A long pause. That officer believed his badge made him untouchable, until he saw who I was. Not just the title on my uniform, but how I handled myself. That, she said, is leadership. The room remained still, but not from boredom. It was the kind of silence that comes when something hits home. Adrian closed the folder in front of her and looked up. Lead with honesty, serve with dignity, and always remember, you do not just wear the uniform. You carry the legacy of everyone who came before you and those who will come after. She stepped down, not for praise, not for recognition, but because the message had been delivered. Let this serve as a reminder. Authority without responsibility is just a mask for weakness. Speak up, stand strong, and when something is wrong, do not look away, because silence comforts the guilty, but courage protects the rest of us.